February 14th, 1944. Calais, Madrid, 8:47 a.m. Juan Pujol García sits at his modest desk, the morning light cutting through the shuttered window of his apartment. His fingers move across the wireless transmitter keys with practiced precision, tapping out a rhythm that Berlin has come to trust implicitly. Outside, the streets of Madrid hum with the neutral city's peculiar wartime commerce. German officials drinking coffee alongside Allied sympathizers, everyone pretending not to notice each other. Pujol pauses, reads the decoded message from London one more time. His handler, Thomas Harris, from MI5's Section B1A, has sent new instructions. Agent 4 in Liverpool needs to report increased convoy activity. Agent 7 in Dover must confirm the 5th Infantry Division's movements. Agent 3, the Venezuelan student supposedly studying in Glasgow, requires funds for a new source inside a Scottish munitions factory. 27 agents, 27 entirely fictional human beings. Pujol lights a cigarette, the smoke curling toward the ceiling as he considers the absurdity of his position. In Berlin, at Abwehr headquarters on Tirpitzufer, intelligence officers are right now collating his reports, cross-referencing them with Luftwaffe reconnaissance, treating every word as gospel truth. They don't know that Agent 4 has never set foot in Liverpool. They don't suspect that Agent 7's boarding house in Dover exists only in carefully crafted correspondence. They have no idea that Agent 3's Venezuelan passport is a masterpiece of MI5 forgery, belonging to a man who has never left the pages of British intelligence files. The network Pujol has built, with British guidance, spans the entire United Kingdom. On paper, it's the most extensive spy ring the Third Reich possesses on British soil. In reality, it's the most elaborate fiction ever sold to a military intelligence service. He begins typing his first report of the day. From Agent 4, observed 12 Liberty ships departing Liverpool docks, 0600 hours, estimated cargo military vehicles, possible North Africa destination. The information is precise enough to seem valuable, vague enough to be useless, and perfectly timed to arrive after the actual convoy has already reached open water. Every detail matters. The hotel receipts that prove Agent 7 travelled from London to Dover last week. The train tickets showing Agent 4's journey from his supposed home in Bootle to the Liverpool waterfront. The family letters Agent 3 writes to his invented mother in Caracas, complete with believable complaints about Scottish weather and university examinations. Pujol's wife, Araceli, brings him coffee. She knows portions of the truth, enough to maintain their cover, not enough to endanger her if questioned. Their children play in the next room, oblivious to the fact that their father orchestrates an invisible theatre company where every performer is a ghost. The apartment becomes Pujol's stage. Here, he is not just one spy, but 28. He writes in different styles, creates distinct personalities, manufactures conflicts between agents who will never meet. Agent 4, the Welsh ex-serviceman, writes with bitter cynicism. Agent 7, the widowed boarding house keeper, includes motherly concerns in her reports. Agent 3 maintains an educated formality, peppered with Spanish colloquialisms. At 9:15 a.m., Pujol transmits his first message. The radio signal travels from Madrid to Hamburg, where German operators transcribe it immediately. From Hamburg, it moves by courier to Berlin, landing on the desk of Karl Erich Kuhlenthal, Pujol's Abwehr handler. Kuhlenthal believes he controls the most valuable asset in Britain. He has no idea he's being played by a Spanish chicken farmer turned accidental genius of deception. In London, Thomas Harris receives confirmation that the transmission went through. He updates his meticulously maintained files, separate folders for each phantom agent, complete with biographical details, financial records, and personality quirks. The 20 Committee, the British intelligence group coordinating all double agents, will review today's traffic this afternoon. The machinery of deception turns another rotation. 27 agents who don't exist continue their imaginary surveillance of a nation preparing for the largest amphibious invasion in human history. And Germany, desperate for intelligence from inside Fortress Britain, believes every word. Pujol finishes his cigarette, opens the next coded message from London. There's work to do. Ghost networks don't run themselves. Section 2. Birth of a double agent. January 1941. Rua do Alecrim, Lisbon, Portugal. Juan Pujol García walks past the British Embassy for the third time this week. The building stands imposing on the Lisbon hillside, its Union Jack hanging limp in the humid winter air. Neutral Portugal has become Europe's intelligence crossroads. German spies brush shoulders with Allied agents in the same Baixa cafes, everyone gathering information, everyone watching everyone else. Pujol is 38 years old, speaks fractured English, and has no intelligence training whatsoever. His resume includes managing a cinema, raising chickens, and deserting from both Republican and nationalist forces during the Spanish Civil War by hiding in a Barcelona apartment for months. By conventional espionage standards, he is spectacularly unqualified, but Pujol possesses something rarer than training: absolute conviction. He despises fascism with a fervor born from watching it destroy Spain. He believes, with complete certainty, that he can help defeat Hitler. The British, when he finally approaches them, think he's delusional. "We have no interest in your services," the embassy official tells him at his fourth attempt. The man, mid-level, deliberately forgettable, barely looks up from his paperwork. "Good day, Senor Pujol." Araceli waits outside. What did they say? They said no. Again. They walk back toward their cramped Lisbon apartment. Around them, the city performs its wartime masquerade. German submarines refuel in Portuguese ports, while British aircraft fly overhead. Wolfram ore mined from Portuguese mountains feeds both Allied and Axis war machines. Refugees crowd the streets, desperate for visas to anywhere that isn't Europe. Pujol makes a decision that night. If Britain won't accept him as an ally, he'll approach them as an enemy. February 1941. He begins with the telephone directory, looking up the German embassy. The boldness of the plan is almost comical. He'll volunteer to spy for Germany, then immediately offer his services to Britain, this time with something valuable to trade. The German military attaché, Major Jebsen, receives him in an ornate office overlooking the Tagus River. Pujol has prepared his pitch carefully. He's a Spanish businessman with commercial connections in Britain. He travels frequently. He's ideologically sympathetic to the new order. He's willing to gather intelligence. "Your English is terrible," Jebsen observes. "I learn quickly. I have contacts who speak it fluently." "What exactly do you propose to offer the Reich?" Pujol leans forward. "I can establish myself in Britain, create a network, send information about military preparations, shipping movements, industrial production. It should never work. Pujol has no spycraft, no training, no credentials. But Germany is desperate for intelligence from inside Britain, especially after the Luftwaffe's failure during the Battle of Britain exposed their ignorance of actual British capabilities. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, operates under constant pressure to prove its worth against its rival, the SS intelligence services. Jebsen assigns him a handler, Federico Naparrate, operating from Madrid. Pujol receives basic instructions, invisible ink, cover addresses in Portugal for correspondence, a small advance of funds. His code name, Alaric. But there's a problem. Britain refuses to issue him a visa. This is where Juan Pujol's creative genius emerges. If he can't actually go to Britain, he'll pretend to go to Britain. July 1941. Using Lisbon's public library, Pujol begins manufacturing intelligence reports about a country he's never visited. He studies guidebooks, railway timetables, and pre-war blue guides. He reads British newspapers in the library's reading room. He invents observation posts and sources describing British defences and military installations from maps and his imagination. His first reports are terrible, riddled with basic errors that any competent intelligence officer should catch. He describes Glasgow dockers getting drunk on wine. They drink whiskey. He calculates travel times between British cities without accounting for wartime restrictions. He reports convoys sailing from Liverpool on days when U-boat warfare made such departures impossible. But the Abwehr wants to believe. They need assets inside Britain. They need to justify their existence. Federico forwards the reports to Berlin, where they're analyzed, filed, and increasingly trusted. Pujol creates his first sub-agent, a Lufthansa pilot based in Liverpool who provides shipping intelligence. The pilot doesn't exist. The intelligence comes from outdated reference materials and wild speculation. Berlin sends more money. By late 1941, Pujol has created 3 entirely fictional sources inside Britain while living in a Lisbon boarding house. He's sending regular intelligence reports to Madrid, receiving German payments, and trying desperately to contact British intelligence with his offer. The British still aren't interested. They have no idea that a Spanish chicken farmer has just invented modern strategic deception. That's about to change. The fabrication begins April 1942. Pension Parker, Lisbon. The boarding house room smells of cheap tobacco and ink. Juan Pujol has covered his small desk with maps, a pre-war Baedeker's Great Britain, a 1938 Bradshaw's Railway Guide, and newspaper clippings from the Times that he reads with a Portuguese-English dictionary beside him. He's been manufacturing intelligence for the Germans for nearly a year now, and the operation has grown beyond anything he initially imagined. On the wall above his desk, invisible to anyone who might inspect the room, Pujol maintains a mental organizational chart. Agent 1, himself, supposedly established in London. Agent 2, the Lufthansa pilot in Liverpool. Agent 3, a Venezuelan student he invented last month, currently studying in Glasgow. Each agent requires a distinct personality, writing style, and perspective. The process is exhausting. Every morning, Pujol wakes at dawn to read British newspapers available in Lisbon's reading rooms. He notes convoy arrivals reported days or weeks late, useless for real intelligence, but perfect for his purposes. He studies advertisements for hotels, memorizes street names, absorbs details about British daily life from cinema newsreels. His wife Araceli helps maintain the cover. When German handlers visit Lisbon, she plays the role of loyal spouse to a successful spy. She keeps their children quiet during Pujol's working hours. She never asks too many questions about the growing stack of British pound notes hidden beneath their mattress. Payment from Berlin for intelligence that exists only in her husband's imagination. Today, Pujol is composing a particularly intricate piece of fiction. Agent 2, the Lufthansa pilot, needs to report on convoy movements from Liverpool docks. The challenge is creating information detailed enough to seem valuable while ensuring it arrives too late to be actionable. He studies a map of Liverpool harbour, identifies specific docks and berths, then invents ship names and cargo manifests. Observed at Gladstone Dock, 1400 hours, 6 merchant vessels preparing departure, he writes in his careful script. SS Almeria, registered Swansea, estimated tonnage 5,000, cargo appearing military supplies covered tarpaulin. The Almeria doesn't exist. Gladstone Dock is real, but Pujol has never seen it. He's working from a map published in 1935. He doesn't know that German bombing has significantly altered Liverpool's docklands. He doesn't know that wartime security makes such detailed observation impossible. But somehow, it doesn't matter. The Abwehr accepts his reports. Federico in Madrid sends regular congratulations and payment increases. Berlin is integrating Alaric's intelligence into their strategic assessments. The entirely fictional network is being treated as Germany's most valuable source inside Britain. But Pujol's fundamental problem remains. He still cannot contact British intelligence with his offer. He tries the embassy again in May. This time he brings proof, copies of his correspondence with the Germans, proof of payment, evidence of his fictional network. The British official, a different one than before, looks through the materials with barely concealed suspicion. This could easily be fabricated. It is fabricated, Pujol says in his halting English. That is the point. I fabricate intelligence for Germans, but I can fabricate better intelligence with British help, real intelligence. You control what Germany knows. We'll be in touch, the official says, which means no. Pujol returns to his boarding house, defeated but not deterred. He expands his network instead. Agent 4, a waiter in South Wales who supposedly has KLM airline connections. Agent 5, an American businessman traveling Britain for commercial purposes. Each new agent requires backstory, motivation, and distinct reporting patterns. The Germans want more specific intelligence about British military installations. Pujol invents an entire reconnaissance trip to Scotland, complete with hotel receipts he forges using stamps purchased from tobacco shops. He describes Highland military camps he's located on maps, invents regiment numbers by combining random digits, reports troop movements based on pure speculation. In Berlin, Abwehr analysts cross-reference his reports with Luftwaffe reconnaissance photographs. They find buildings where Pujol said they'd be, roads that match his descriptions, landscape features that correspond to his observations. They don't realize they're confirming geography from published maps, not secret intelligence from actual spies. By summer 1942, Juan Pujol has created the most successful espionage deception in history, while sitting in a Portuguese boarding house, armed only with library materials and audacity. His network comprises 5 agents across Britain, generating dozens of intelligence reports monthly, all describing a country he's never visited. The Germans pay him 600, substantial money in wartime. They code him their most trusted British source, and British intelligence still doesn't know he exists. MI5's Gamble, July 1942, St. James's Street, London, MI5 headquarters. Thomas Harris spreads the intercepted Abwehr communications across the conference table. Sunlight filters through blackout curtains, casting shadows across German radio transcripts that have kept him awake for 3 consecutive nights. Around the table, Section B1A's senior officers lean forward, studying the impossible puzzle before them. Alaric reports 16 convoys departed Liverpool last month. Harris reads aloud, his Spanish Basque accent sharpening with exhaustion. He describes troop movements in Scotland, industrial production in Wales, and bombing damage in Manchester. Everything he reports is either outdated, slightly wrong, or strategically irrelevant. So he's incompetent, says Lieutenant Colonel Robertson, head of B1A. That's what we thought initially. Harris pulls out another sheet. But look at the pattern. Every report arrives too late to affect actual operations. Every piece of accurate information is already public or obsolete. Every strategic assessment is subtly misleading. This isn't incompetence, this is art. The officers exchange glances. Since early 1940, MI5's double-cross system has turned every German agent operating in Britain, every single one. The 20 Committee, so named because 20 in Roman numerals forms a double cross, coordinates the careful feeding of misinformation back to Berlin through controlled channels. But Alaric isn't one of theirs. Signals intelligence intercepts show the Germans receiving regular intelligence from inside Britain, from an agent they consider highly valuable, and MI5 has no idea who he is. How is he avoiding our net? Asks John Masterman, the Oxford Don who chairs the 20 Committee. Because he's not in Britain, Harris says quietly. We think he's operating from Lisbon or Madrid, inventing his intelligence from library materials. The room goes silent. You're suggesting, Robertson says slowly, that a freelance amateur has successfully convinced German military intelligence that he's running an active spy network inside Britain, using only guidebooks and newspapers. I'm suggesting exactly that, and I'm suggesting we recruit him. Harris has spent weeks piecing together Alaric's true identity, cross-referencing Abwehr communications with British visa applications, following money trails through neutral banking systems, interviewing embassy staff who remembered a persistent Spanish man offering to spy. The pieces gradually assembled into a portrait of Juan Pujol García, chicken farmer, cinema manager, and apparently natural genius of deception. Here's the situation, Harris continues. The Germans have come to trust Alaric implicitly. His reports confirm their existing intelligence assessments. He tells them what they expect to hear, with just enough accuracy to seem credible. If we bring him under our control, we control what Berlin knows about Britain, Robertson finishes. God Almighty. The implications ripple across the table. The 20 Committee operates 17 controlled German agents, feeding carefully calibrated misinformation to Berlin. But those agents are known quantities, their limitations understood by both sides. Alaric represents something unprecedented, an intelligence source the Germans consider independent and reliable, completely unaware of British manipulation. There's a problem, Masterman observes. If we recruit him, we need to maintain his credibility. That means we need to make his imaginary network real. Not real, Harris corrects. Realistic. There's a difference. Within a week, MI5 authorizes what will become Operation GARBO. Harris flies to Lisbon personally to make contact with Pujol. The meeting occurs in a safe house near Estoril Casino, where agents of 5 nations gamble nightly, everyone pretending not to recognize each other. Pujol, when Harris finally meets him, is underwhelming physically. Slight build, thinning hair, nervous energy. But when he begins describing his fictional network, his invented agents, his carefully manufactured intelligence reports, Harris recognizes something extraordinary. You've been operating without training, Harris says in Spanish. Without support. How? Pujol shrugs. I read newspapers, I study maps. I imagine what German officers want to believe, then I tell them stories that confirm their beliefs. You understand strategic deception instinctively. I understand fascism, Pujol replies. I watched it destroy Spain. I cannot fight with guns. I can fight with lies. Harris makes his pitch. Come to London. Continue reporting to Berlin. But now with MI5 resources, with accurate intelligence carefully altered to mislead, with a support structure that transforms his amateur deception into professional-grade strategic manipulation. Pujol has one question. When do we start? August 1942. Pujol arrives in Britain for the first time, the country he's been describing to German intelligence for over a year. He moves into a London safe house with his family. Harris assigns him a new code name, suggested by Pujol's elaborate deceptions, GARBO, after the actress whose performances convince audiences of impossible fictions. The real work begins. Harris and Pujol sit together in a cramped MI5 office, reconstructing the entire phantom network. 3 fictional agents become 5, then 7, then eventually 27. Each requires complete biographical documentation. Each needs backstory, motivation, and personality. Agent 4, Harris says. Tell me about Agent 4. Welsh waiter, Pujol replies. Anti-British sentiments, willing to betray his country for money, currently working in a Liverpool restaurant. Does he have a name? Pujol pauses. Until now, the agents existed only as numbers in his reports. Harris is asking him to make them real, or rather real enough to fool Germany's intelligence apparatus indefinitely. Fred, Pujol says finally. His name is Fred Gerbers. Harris writes it down. Agent 4 becomes Fred Gerbers, born Swansea 1901, employed at the Liver Buildings restaurant, recruited March 1942. The fabrication deepens, the deception grows more elaborate. And in Berlin, Abwehr officers continue to trust every word Alaric, now GARBO, sends them. They have no idea their most valued source is now completely controlled by British intelligence. The Ghost Network has found its master puppeteer, building the theatre, October 1942, 58 St. James's Street, London. The basement office has no windows. Artificial light washes over 3 large tables covered with files, photographs, and meticulously detailed organizational charts. This is Thomas Harris's domain. Part intelligence archive, part theatrical prop department, part writer's studio. Here, 27 people who don't exist are being brought to life through paperwork. Harris sits with Charles Haynes, an MI5 technical specialist, reviewing the latest batch of fabricated documents. Between them lies the complete identity package for Agent 3, the Venezuelan student supposedly studying commercial science at Glasgow University. Birth certificate, Caracas, 1917. Haynes reads from his checklist. Venezuelan passport with genuine stamps from Portuguese and British customs. University enrollment papers, correspondence with his mother in Venezuela, bank statements showing tuition payments, boarding house receipts from Govan Road, Glasgow. Every document is genuine in the sense that it's physically real, printed on correct paper stock, bearing appropriate stamps, aged to appear months or years old. Every document is false in that it records events that never happened, describing a person who doesn't exist. Harris lifts one of the letters supposedly written by Agent 3's mother. It's in Spanish, with tiny grammatical errors a native Venezuelan might make. It mentions family news, weather in Caracas, concerns about her son's studies in cold Scotland. The paper has been artificially aged. The envelope bears genuine Venezuelan postage marks obtained through neutral diplomatic channels. This is remarkable work, Harris murmurs. Wait until you see Agent 7's family correspondence, Haynes says. We've created 3 years of letters between her and her fictitious daughter in Brighton, birthday cards, condolence notes after her invented husband's death. We've even composed poetry she supposedly writes in her spare time. The scope of the operation is staggering. GARBO, the code name for Pujol's now MI5-controlled network, has grown from 3 agents to 14, with plans for more. Each requires complete documentation. Each needs a believable cover story that will withstand German scrutiny. Agent 4, Fred Gerbers, the Welsh waiter, has a birth certificate from Swansea, employment records from restaurants across South Wales, and train tickets showing his movements between Liverpool and his hometown. MI5's forgery section has created these documents using genuine historical paper, period-appropriate typewriters, and stamps acquired from defunct businesses. Agent 7, the boarding house keeper in Dover, exists in an even more elaborate fiction. MI5 has manufactured her dead husband's military records from the First World War, including a death certificate from the Somme. They've created ration books, utility bills, and correspondence with the Dover Housing Authority about repairs to her boarding house. The Germans won't see most of these documents, Harris explains to a new team member, a young woman named Sarah Bishop, recruited for her skill in creating authentic-seeming correspondence. But we need them to exist. When GARBO reports that Agent 7 mentioned her daughter's upcoming wedding, we need actual wedding invitation drafts in her file. When Agent 4 claims business took him to Cardiff, we need hotel receipts and restaurant bills that could theoretically be traced. Why? Bishop asks, if the Germans can't verify any of this? Because we're not just fooling German intelligence officers. We're fooling ourselves into believing these people are real. The moment we start treating them as mere constructs, Inconsistencies will creep into their stories. The deception collapses. Harris has become a master of this psychological discipline. He maintains separate files for each phantom agent, updated regularly with new biographical details. He tracks their relationships with each other. Agent 3 introduced Agent 8. Agent 4 distrusts Agent 6. He notes their personality quirks, political views, family situations. Agent 12, Harris reads from his notes during a team briefing, is becoming concerned about his wife's health. She's been unwell since August. He's mentioned it 3 times in his reports. We need to either resolve this situation or explain why he's continuing to work for us despite domestic stress. We could have her recover gradually, suggests Cyril Mills, another team member, or make the illness more serious, counters Harris. It explains why Agent 12 needs money. It justifies his willingness to continue dangerous intelligence work. They spend 20 minutes discussing the medical condition of a woman who doesn't exist, married to a man who was never born, whose financial desperation stems from entirely fabricated circumstances. This level of detail seems absurd until you remember that German intelligence officers in Berlin are reading these same reports, cross-referencing them, building psychological profiles of GARBO's agents. The expense records require similar attention. Agent 4 travels from Liverpool to Dover to meet Agent 7. MI5 creates train tickets for the journey. Not just first class versus third class, but specific routes, specific dates, specific connecting trains that match actual wartime railway schedules. They manufacture hotel receipts from the Crown Hotel in Dover, complete with stamps and signatures from managers who don't exist, but whose handwriting must remain consistent across multiple documents. We're spending 2 hours debating whether Agent 4 would take the 9:15 or the 11:30 train from Liverpool to London, Bishop observes one afternoon. Because the 9:15 requires a connection at Crewe, Harris explains patiently, which means additional receipts, additional opportunities for the story to fall apart. The 11:30 is direct, but arrives after dark, which affects what Agent 4 could observe in Dover that evening. Every detail cascades into other details. By December 1942, the GARBO network comprises 19 agents and sub-agents, each documented with extraordinary thoroughness. The files fill 2 large cabinets in Harris's basement office, cross-indexed, updated weekly, treated with the seriousness of actual intelligence assets. In Madrid, Karl Erich Kuhlenthal, GARBO's German handler, receives these reports with growing confidence in his prized agent. He doesn't know that every receipt, every letter, every expense claim flowing from GARBO's network has been manufactured in a windowless London basement by Britain's most creative intelligence officers. The theatrical production is nearly complete. The stage is set. The actors, though invisible, have become real enough to fool an empire. Soon, they'll need to give the performance of their lives. January 23rd, 1943, Tirpitzufer, Berlin, Abwehr headquarters. Kapitän zur See Hans-Joachim Reile spreads the latest GARBO transmission across his desk. Outside, Berlin shivers under January snow. Inside, the Abwehr building hums with the desperate energy of an intelligence service losing the war. Reile, head of Section 3F, responsible for analysing British intelligence, has become obsessed with Agent 4, the Welsh waiter in Liverpool whose reports have become increasingly valuable. Agent 4 reports, January 20th, so 5:30 hours, observed convoy assembling Gladstone Dock. Reile reads aloud to his deputy Oberleutnant Schmidt. 14 merchant vessels, estimated combined tonnage 85,000. Observed military vehicles loading, canvas-covered cargo consistent with artillery pieces. Convoy escort, 2 destroyers, HMS Vanquisher and HMS Wrestler. Schmidt checks the vessel registry. Vanquisher is Admiralty class, Wrestler is V and W class, 1917 vintage. Both assigned to Western Approaches Command, based in Liverpool. Agent 4's information is consistent then. Perfectly consistent, Herr Captain. What neither German officer knows is that Agent 4, Fred Gerbers, supposedly born in Swansea, currently employed at a Liverpool restaurant, has never existed. The ships he describes are real, identified from naval reference books available in London libraries. The convoy did depart, but 3 days before Agent 4's report. The cargo wasn't artillery, it was food supplies for North Africa. In London, Thomas Harris had crafted this report with surgical precision. Real ship names to pass German verification, accurate dock locations from pre-war maps. But timing delayed just enough to be operationally useless, and cargo details subtly wrong to send German strategic assessments in incorrect directions. Agent 4's backstory has become elaborate through 18 months of careful construction. Born 1901, Swansea. Father killed in mining accident 1915. Mother remarried to English stepfather, creating Fred's lasting resentment of the English. Worked various restaurant positions across Wales before landing at the Liver Buildings restaurant in Liverpool's commercial district. Recruited by GARBO March 1942 after expressing anti-British sentiments and desperate need for money. In Berlin's files, Agent 4 has a complete dossier. Personality assessment: mercenary, motivated primarily by financial gain. Limited education, but sharp observational skills. Access to Liverpool docks through restaurant clientele, including merchant marine officers and dock workers who frequent his establishment. Riley has come to trust Agent 4's reports more than Luftwaffe reconnaissance. The photographs from high-altitude flights are often unclear, weather-dependent, costly. Agent 4 provides detailed ground-level intelligence about ship movements, cargo types, convoy schedules. His reports arrive regularly, describe specific vessels by name, include tactical details that aerial reconnaissance cannot capture. What's Agent 4's current assignment? Schmidt asks. Ryler checks the file. Continue monitoring convoy assembly. Report any unusual concentration of troop ships. Particular attention to landing craft or amphibious warfare equipment. The orders go by coded transmission to Madrid, where Kulenthal forwards them to Garbo, who transmits them to London, where Harris reads them with quiet satisfaction. Germany has just told Britain exactly what intelligence gaps they're trying to fill. February 1943. Agent 4 reports become more frequent. Harris has crafted a narrative arc for the Welsh waiter. His restaurant clientele has expanded to include more military personnel as Liverpool's strategic importance grows. Dockworkers trust him. Officers drink at his establishment after long shifts. He overhears conversations about shipping schedules, maintenance problems, crew assignments. Agent 4 reports, February 8th, HMS Rodney observed entering Liverpool for refit. Damage visible to forward turret, possibly from Atlantic engagement. Harris writes this report knowing that Rodney's repairs are already completed, the ship having returned to active service 3 days ago. But the information seems detailed, specific, valuable. In Berlin, analysts add this to their assessment of British naval capabilities. They note Rodney's damage, estimate repair time, adjust their calculations of available British battleship strength in the Atlantic. Every calculation is slightly wrong because every foundational fact Agent 4 provides has been calibrated to mislead. The Liverpool that Agent 4 describes exists in meticulous detail. He knows the names of docks, Princes, Albert, Gladstone, Waterloo. He reports on bombing damage to Liverpool's waterfront, describing destroyed warehouses and damaged cranes. All of this information is accurate, verifiable through German reconnaissance. What Agent 4 doesn't report is equally important. He never mentions the increased military preparations in southeastern England. He doesn't observe the concentration of landing craft in smaller southern ports. His attention remains fixed on Liverpool's northwest location, away from the actual staging areas for future Allied operations, March 1943. Agent 4's financial records show MI5's attention to detail. Monthly stipend payments of 45 enough to seem generous to a restaurant worker, not enough to raise suspicion. Expense claims for travel to surrounding areas to meet other sources. Train tickets from Liverpool to Manchester, Liverpool to Chester, carefully manufactured and filed. Harris has even created correspondence between Agent 4 and GARBO, written in the semi-literate English of a working-class Welshman whose education ended at age 14. Dear J, one letter reads, "Business good this month. The customers are spending more freely, and several of the shipping officers have been very talkative after a few drinks. I have the information you requested about the convoy schedules. Will send by usual means." The letter shows grammatical mistakes consistent with Agent 4's limited education. It's vague enough to avoid specific intelligence compromise, specific enough to seem authentic. It was written by Harris in a London office, placed in Agent 4's file, and never actually sent because Agent 4 doesn't exist to send it. By spring 1943, German naval intelligence bases significant portions of their Atlantic convoy tracking on Agent 4's reports. U-boat command in Lorient receives summaries of his intelligence. Wolfpack commanders planning ambush positions factor his observations into their calculations. They're hunting based on ghost information, chasing convoys described by a phantom, trusting intelligence from a waiter who never poured a drink in Liverpool because he was never born in Swansea, never lost a father to mining accidents, never developed resentment toward England, and never agreed to betray his country for German money. Agent 4 has become real through sheer force of consistent, detailed, believable fabrication. His reports land on Berlin desks with the weight of truth. His observations shape German strategic thinking, and every word is fiction, carefully crafted in a London basement by the most successful counterintelligence operation in history, Dover's Phantom Observer, March 15, 1943. Dover, England. Real location. Imaginary observer. The white cliffs rise above the harbour, visible even through the morning mist rolling off the English Channel. Dover has become Fortress Britain's front line, 21 miles from occupied France, close enough to hear German artillery on quiet nights. The town bristles with anti-aircraft batteries, coastal defence guns, radar installations. Every street corner seems to host soldiers, every building a potential military installation. Agent 7 in the reality MI5 has constructed runs a boarding house on Castle Street. She's a widow named Gertrude, her husband killed at the Somme in 1917, her son serving with the Royal Navy somewhere in the Mediterranean. She takes in lodgers to supplement her widow's pension. Among her tenants are servicemen on temporary assignment, dock workers, the occasional government official. She observes, she listens, she reports everything to GARBO. None of this is true. Agent 7 doesn't exist. No boarding house on Castle Street hosts phantom lodgers, but in Berlin, Gertrude has become one of Germany's most valued observers of British military preparations in Dover. Harris had invented Agent 7 in late 1942, deciding GARBO's network needed eyes on Dover's strategic importance. He'd created her entire biography with characteristic thoroughness, Gertrude Morrison, née Klein. Born 1889, Bromley, Kent. German father, British mother, the mixed heritage explaining her willingness to work for Germany. Married William Morrison, 1912, widowed, 1917. One son, David, born 1913, currently lieutenant on HMS Achilles. The psychological profile Harris built makes her treachery almost sympathetic. She's not motivated by ideology or greed. She's exhausted by war. She lost her husband to the Great War, now risks losing her son to this one. Germany promised her they'd protect David if captured, a lie, but one desperate mother's might believe. MI5's forgery section created Gertrude's entire documentary existence. Marriage certificate from St. Mary's Church, Bromley, William Morrison's death certificate from the War Office, David's birth certificate, school records, Royal Navy enlistment papers. Letters between mother and son, carefully composed to show their relationship, David's formal tone, Gertrude's worried maternal voice. "My dearest David," one letter reads, composed by Sarah Bishop in Harris's office, "the weather continues dreadful here in Dover. We can hear the guns from France on clear nights. I do wish you'd write more often. Your silence worries me terribly. All my love, Mother." The letter was never sent because David Morrison doesn't exist to receive it, but it sits in Agent 7's file, establishing character, creating emotional reality for a woman who was never born. April 1943. Agent 7's reports to GARBO describe Dover's military build-up with impressive detail. Harris crafts these carefully, using actual geographic information combined with strategic misdirection. Agent 7 reports, April 3rd, observed increased military traffic through Dover. Estimated 2 infantry battalions passed through town, heading west. Vehicle markings suggest 5th Infantry Division. Notable increase in officers' accommodation requests at local establishments. The 5th Infantry Division information is accurate, easily verified by German intelligence through multiple sources. But the direction of movement is wrong, and the implication that troops are moving away from Dover toward western staging areas sends German strategic assessment in precisely the wrong direction. Kulenthal in Madrid forwards Agent 7's reports with increasing confidence. He notes in his communications to Berlin, "Source 7 proves increasingly valuable. Her boarding house location provides excellent observation post. Lodgers include military personnel who speak freely, recommend continued cultivation and financial support." Berlin agrees. They send additional funds through neutral banking channels. Harris ensures GARBO reports receiving these payments and passing Agent 7's share to her. In reality, the money goes into MI5 operational accounts, but the financial trail must appear consistent. May 1943. Harris decides Agent 7 needs a crisis, something to deepen her characterization and explain future reporting gaps if needed. He crafts a personal tragedy. Agent 7 writes, "Received terrible news May 12th. David's ship damaged in Mediterranean action. He is wounded but will recover. Navy Board offers no specific details beyond injuries sustained in performance of duty. Am beside myself with worry." This development serves multiple purposes. It makes Gertrude more human, a worried mother, not just an intelligence source. It provides excuse for potential reporting delays. It reinforces her motivation for continuing to work for Germany, hoping they'll make good on promises to protect David if captured again. The German response is predictable. Kulenthal sends reassurances. Berlin updates Agent 7's file with the personal information. In their analysis, Gertrude Morrison becomes more than a source. She becomes a person they understand, sympathize with, trust. June 1943. Agent 7 reports intensifying Dover military activity, but Harris ensures her reports describe defensive preparations, not offensive staging. She observes coastal artillery emplacements being reinforced. She notes increased anti-aircraft batteries. She describes civil defense exercises and bombing shelter construction. All of this is true. Dover is being heavily fortified, but Agent 7's reports emphasize defense while downplaying the offensive preparations actually occurring. She doesn't mention the specialized landing craft crews training in nearby Folkestone. She doesn't observe the amphibious warfare equipment moving through Dover under cover of darkness. Her attention focuses where Harris directs it, on accurate but strategically misleading details. Agent 7 reports, June 18th, overheard conversation between 2 Royal Engineer officers lodging at my establishment. They discussed coastal fortification projects, mentioned concrete bunker construction schedule running behind due to material shortages. The conversation never happened because the officers don't exist in a boarding house that isn't real. But the information about construction delays is accurate. Harris pulled it from actual military logistics reports. The Germans can verify the delays through other intelligence channels, which reinforces Agent 7's credibility. By summer 1943, Gertrude Morrison has become one of Berlin's most trusted British sources. Her reports arrive regularly. Her information proves accurate when checked. Her personal circumstances make her motivations understandable. She's reliable, careful, well-positioned. She's also completely fictional, a character in the most elaborate intelligence fiction ever written, performing for an audience that doesn't know they're watching theatre. In Berlin, analysts continue building their assessment of British defensive preparations. Agent 7's reports shape their understanding of Dover's role. They see a fortress being reinforced, not a staging area for invasion. They see exactly what Harris wants them to see. And they trust completely a widow who never mourned a husband who never died, whose son never served on ships that never carried him into battles he never fought. The Phantom of Dover keeps watching, keeps reporting, keeps feeding Berlin the most dangerous substance in warfare, believable lies. Glasgow's invented informant, April 8th, 1943. Glasgow, Scotland. A city agent 3 never visited. The Clyde shipyards hammer and clang with wartime production. Glasgow has become Britain's industrial heart, its shipyards launching destroyers and corvettes, its factories producing munitions, its docks handling convoy assembly. The city sprawls along the river in industrial chaos, cranes silhouetted against Scottish skies, welding torches sparking in the darkness, workers streaming through factory gates in endless shifts. Agent 3 in the fiction MI5 has constructed is a Venezuelan student named Carlos Peral, studying commercial science at Glasgow University. He lives in a boarding house on Govan Road near the shipyards. His student status provides perfect cover for moving through the city, observing military preparations, gathering intelligence. He's young, idealistic, sympathetic to fascism for reasons of South American political complexity that his German handlers don't fully understand, but accept. Carlos Peral has never set foot in Glasgow. He doesn't exist, but his reports have become valuable enough that Berlin considers him one of GARBO's most promising sub-agents. Harris created Agent 3 in early 1942, before MI5 even controlled GARBO. Pujol had invented him during his Lisbon period, imagining a Venezuelan contact who could provide intelligence from Scotland. When Harris took over the operation, he expanded Carlos's backstory with obsessive detail. Born 1917, Caracas, Venezuela. Son of Carlos Peral Sr., a coffee merchant with German business connections, educated at Colegio San Ignacio, Caracas. Won scholarship to Glasgow University 1939, arriving just before war's outbreak. Initially intended to return home, but political developments and German encouragement persuaded him to remain and gather intelligence. MI5's forgery section produced Carlos's complete documentation, Venezuelan passport with genuine stamps from British immigration, university enrollment records from Glasgow, boarding house receipts from Mrs. MacLeod's establishment on Govan Road. Mrs. MacLeod also doesn't exist, but Harris created her with the same thoroughness, widowed 1938, runs boarding house to support herself, takes in students and workers, asks no questions. Agent 3's correspondence with his mother in Caracas became one of Harris's most elaborate creations. Sarah Bishop spent weeks crafting letters in Spanish that captured a young man far from home, torn between family duty and ideological conviction. Querida mamá, one letter begins, El invierno aquí es terrible. Echo de menos el sol de Caracas. Mis estudios continúan bien, aunque la guerra hace que muchas clases sean interrumpidas. Dear mother, the winter here is terrible. I miss Caracas sunshine. My studies continue well, although the war means many classes are interrupted. The letters include mundane details, complaints about Scottish weather, discussions of university examinations, requests for money. They establish Carlos as real, three-dimensional, human. They were never sent because Carlos Peral doesn't exist to write them, and his mother doesn't exist to receive them. May 1943. Agent 3's reports describe Glasgow's industrial output with impressive specificity. Harris crafts these using actual production data, carefully calibrated to seem current while being outdated enough to be operationally useless. Agent 3 reports, May 15th, observed launch of destroyer from John Brown and Company shipyard Clydebank. Vessel appears to be emergency program destroyer, estimated 700 tons displacement. Launch ceremony attended by Admiralty officials. Local reports suggest this is third destroyer launched from this yard in 4 months. Every detail is verifiable. John Brown and Company is a real shipyard. Emergency program destroyers are known to German intelligence. The launch ceremony occurred, but 6 weeks earlier than Agent 3 reports it. By the time this intelligence reaches Berlin and gets analyzed, the destroyer is already conducting sea trials. Berlin doesn't know it's receiving intelligence on delay. They see a source providing detailed, accurate information about British shipbuilding capacity. The timing seems reasonable. Carlos observes the launch, reports to GARBO, GARBO transmits to Madrid, Madrid forwards to Berlin. The communications delay seems natural. June 1943. Harris decides Agent 3 needs expansion. He creates Agent 3-1, Agent 3-2, and Agent 3-3, a network of sub-sources that Carlos has supposedly recruited around Glasgow. Agent 3-1, Scottish nationalist named Donny, working as welder in Fairfield shipyard. Anti-English sentiments make him willing to provide information about ship construction. Agent 3-2. Greek merchant seaman named Theo, temporarily stranded in Glasgow, who provides information about convoy assembly and ship movements. Agent 3-3. Irish dock worker named Paddy, with Republican sympathies, willing to report on cargo movements and military shipments. None of them exist. But now, Agent 3 has become a network unto himself. 4 sources providing overlapping information from different vantage points across Glasgow's industrial complex. The reports multiply. Donny describes welding work on corvette hulls. Theo provides convoy departure schedules, always outdated. Paddy reports military cargo being loaded onto transport ships, accurate ship names, wrong cargo details. Berlin's assessment of Agent 3 grows increasingly positive. Kuhlenthal writes in his evaluation, Source 3 has demonstrated initiative in recruiting sub-sources. His network now provides comprehensive coverage of Glasgow military-industrial activity. Recommend increased financial support and continued cultivation. Harris reads this with satisfaction. He's created not just one fictional spy, but 4. Each requires separate documentation, distinct personality, consistent reporting voice. The workload has quadrupled, but the credibility has increased exponentially. July 1943. Agent 3 faces a crisis that Harris invents to add realism. Carlos's university examinations are approaching. He needs to focus on studies or risk being sent home to Venezuela. This threatens his intelligence gathering. GARBO reports this dilemma to Madrid. Kuhlenthal responds immediately. Source 3 must maintain his student cover, advise reducing reporting frequency temporarily. Academic failure and subsequent deportation would eliminate a valuable asset. This exchange serves Harris's purposes perfectly. It establishes that Carlos's student identity is real. It isn't. It provides excuse for reduced reporting during summer months when Harris needs to focus GARBO's network elsewhere. It shows German concern for protecting their sources' cover, which reinforces their belief in his reality. August 1943. Carlos passes his examinations, fictional exams at a real university he doesn't attend. He resumes regular reporting. But now, Harris has established a pattern: periodic crises, temporary reduction in intelligence flow, resolution and resumption. It's the rhythm of real espionage, not the mechanical consistency of fabricated reports. Agent 3 describes Glasgow with intimate detail. The smell of the Clyde at low tide, the sound of shipyard hammers echoing through tenement streets, the taste of Scottish beer in university pubs where students gather. Harris pulls these details from guidebooks, from newsreels, from interviews with MI5 staff who actually know Glasgow. The deception reaches absurd sophistication. Harris creates a diary, supposedly kept by Carlos, never sent to Germany, existing only in MI5 files as character reference. In it, Carlos wrestles with conscience, misses his family, questions his involvement in espionage, ultimately reaffirms his commitment to the cause. August 12, 1943, the diary reads, "Received letter from Mama asking when I'm coming home. How can I explain? She doesn't understand the importance of what I'm doing. Papa would understand. He always said the German business model was superior, but I cannot tell either of them. The loneliness is sometimes unbearable." This diary entry was written by Thomas Harris, describing emotions of a Venezuelan student who doesn't exist, missing a family he never had, working for a cause built on fiction. By autumn 1943, Agent 3 and his sub-network have become Germany's primary source for Scottish industrial intelligence. Their reports shape Berlin's assessment of British production capacity, convoy assembly patterns, shipbuilding schedules. Every assessment is subtly wrong. Every conclusion leads German planning in carefully prepared directions. And Carlos Peral continues his non-existent studies at Glasgow University, never knowing he's the most successful spy who never lived. The Paper Trail, November 1943, 58 St James's Street, London, the Archive of Phantoms. 2 filing cabinets, 4 feet tall, metal grey, secured with combination locks. Inside them rests the most elaborate fiction ever created for intelligence purposes, the complete documentary existence of 27 people who never drew breath. Thomas Harris stands before the open cabinets, briefing a new team member, Patricia Threadgold, just transferred from Section 5. She stares at the files with visible bewilderment. "These are all fake?" she asks. "That depends on your definition of fake," Harris replies, pulling out Agent 4's file. It's 3 inches thick. Fred Gerbers was never born, but he has a birth certificate. He never worked at the Liver Buildings restaurant, but he has employment records, wage stubs, tax documents. He never took the train from Liverpool to Manchester, but here are his tickets. Harris spreads documents across the table. A birth certificate on 1901 paper stock, slightly yellowed, bearing Swansea municipal stamps, national registration identity card issued 1939, ration book with stamps used for various dates, employment letter from the Liver Buildings restaurant manager, written on restaurant letterhead that MI5's technical section obtained from Liverpool, signed by a manager who actually existed before being transferred elsewhere. Every document would pass inspection, Harris continues. Not casual inspection, intensive scrutiny. We've used period-appropriate paper, correct typewriter models, genuine stamps and seals. If German intelligence somehow intercepted these materials, forensic analysis would confirm their authenticity. But why? Threadgold asks. The Germans will never see these documents. We see them. That's what matters. The moment we start treating these agents as abstract concepts rather than real people, inconsistencies enter their stories. We begin making mistakes. The deception unravels. He pulls out another file, Agent 7 Gertrude Morrison, even thicker than Agent 4's. Inside, marriage certificate from 1912, William Morrison's death certificate from the Somme, bearing British Army stamps, and an officer's signature. Letters between Gertrude and her son David, covering 3 years. Birthday cards. A recipe book with handwritten annotations, supposedly in Gertrude's handwriting. Utility bills for her Dover boarding house. Correspondence with the Dover Housing Authority about roof repairs. "This is madness," Threadgold murmurs. "This is craft," Harris corrects. "Look at these letters between Gertrude and David. Notice how his handwriting changes between 1940 and 1942. Early letters show rushed script. He's writing quickly between duties. Later letters are more careful. He's injured, recovering, has time to write properly. That evolution is intentional. It's how real correspondence develops." He shows her Agent 3's file, Carlos Peral's Venezuelan passport, genuine passport book obtained through diplomatic channels, filled with false information but real stamps, university enrollment documents from Glasgow, boarding house receipts spanning 18 months, bank statements showing tuition payments, rent, living expenses. "These bank statements," Harris says, "required us to create an account in Carlos's name at a Glasgow bank. We deposit money monthly to maintain appearance. The bank believes Carlos Peral is a real student. Clerks have seen his paperwork. If German intelligence somehow inquired through neutral channels, the bank would confirm the account exists. We're banking for imaginary people. We're creating reality for imaginary people. There's a difference." The process Harris describes is staggering in complexity. Every fictional agent maintains financial records. GARBO reports paying them monthly stipends, usually between $30 and $50. Those payments must be documented. So MI5 maintains ledgers showing cash withdrawals, payment distributions, expense reimbursements. Agent 4 claims travel expenses for trips from Liverpool to Manchester. MI5 creates train tickets for specific journeys on specific dates using genuine ticket stock obtained from British Rail. They generate hotel receipts from Manchester establishments, real hotels, false stays, documents that would pass casual verification. Agent 7 needs to explain her Dover boarding house operations. MI5 generates guest registers, showing lodgers coming and going, fictional tenants with common English names, check-in and check-out dates, nightly rates. The registers use a format consistent with boarding house record-keeping of the era. "Here's something particularly intricate," Harris says, pulling out a manila folder. Agent 8 is a Spanish Republican refugee living in Manchester. He writes letters to family in Spain. "We have to ensure those letters contain appropriate content, family news, requests for information about relatives, comments about life in England. But we also seed intelligence information subtly, things he supposedly overhears or observes." He shows Threadgold a letter in Spanish, 3 pages of careful script. Sarah Bishop translated it for verification. It discusses the writer's nephew learning to walk, complaints about Manchester weather, concern about an uncle sick with tuberculosis. Then buried in the 3rd paragraph, a casual mention that the nephew's father works in a factory now producing military equipment of some kind. He cannot discuss details, but the shifts are long and the pay is better. "The Germans read this letter through intercepted mail channels," Harris explains. "They see what appears to be innocent family correspondence, but the mention of factory work gets flagged, cross-referenced with other intelligence about Manchester industrial production. It confirms information from other sources. It seems natural, uncontrived. It's perfectly designed to reinforce existing German assessments." The letter was never sent. Agent 8 doesn't exist to write it. His nephew doesn't exist to learn walking. But the letter sits in MI5 files, maintaining the fiction's integrity. Threadgold examines more files. Each contains similar detail. Medical records for agents who reported illness, school reports for agents' fictional children, marriage certificates, death certificates, property deeds, insurance policies. An entire shadow society documented with bureaucratic thoroughness. "This must cost a fortune," she observes. "Approximately $2,000 monthly for the entire GARBO network," Harris confirms. "We pay imaginary salaries, reimburse imaginary expenses, maintain imaginary bank accounts. The Treasury questions these expenditures constantly. We tell them it's operational necessity. We can't reveal the true nature because too many people knowing compromises security. So, Treasury officials believe GARBO is paying real agents. Treasury officials believe what they need to believe. We provide enough documentation to satisfy auditors without revealing operational details. The filing cabinets represent more than paperwork. They represent a philosophical commitment to deception so complete it blurs the line between fiction and reality. Harris has created not just false documents, but false lives, complete, consistent, believable. By late 1943, the GARBO network comprises 27 documented agents. Each has backstory, motivation, personality quirks, family situations. Each generates paperwork consistent with their cover. Each leaves a trail through British society, bank records, travel tickets, correspondence, official documents. None of them are real, but their paperwork is genuine in every technical sense. Paper from correct era. Stamps from real institutions, signatures that match actual officials' handwriting from the period. If magic could suddenly materialize these people into existence, their documents would seamlessly integrate into their supposed lives. The Germans must never see most of this, Harris concludes, but we must believe they could. That tension between secrecy and verifiability keeps the fiction rigorous. The moment we relax our standards, we introduce inconsistencies that could expose the entire operation. He closes the filing cabinet, spins the combination lock. Inside, 27 complete lives rest in alphabetical order. 27 phantoms with birth certificates and bank accounts. 27 actors in history's most elaborate theatrical production. And in Berlin, intelligence officers continue analyzing their reports, never suspecting they're watching a play where every character is performed by absence, every scene set in the imagination, every word written by the greatest scriptwriters in the history of espionage. The show, Harris knows, is about to reach its climax. The greatest scene is still to come. Section 10. German intelligence takes the bait. December 15th, 1943. Tierpitzhofer, Berlin. Abwehr headquarters. The conference room on the third floor hosts 15 officers from various sections of German military intelligence. Outside, Berlin suffers under Allied bombing, rubble-strewn streets, shattered buildings, the constant threat of air raids. Inside, intelligence analysts debate Britain's invasion intentions with growing desperation. Kapitan Zursay Ryler stands before a large map of the British Isles, dotted with coloured pins representing intelligence sources. Red pins mark suspected Allied military concentrations. Blue pins show naval activity. Green pins indicate industrial production centres. A disproportionate number cluster around Liverpool, Glasgow and Dover, exactly where GARBO's network has directed German attention. Gentlemen, Riley begins, we must assess Allied invasion capability and probable timing. Our most reliable intelligence comes from source Alaric, codename GARBO, operating in Britain since 1941. He doesn't know GARBO is controlled by British intelligence. Neither does anyone in the room. The Abwehr has built its entire assessment of British invasion preparations on reports from GARBO's 27 phantom agents. GARBO's network now comprises 27 active sources covering key locations across Britain, Riley continues. Agent 4 in Liverpool provides naval intelligence. Agent 7 in Dover monitors southeastern coastal preparations. Agent 3 in Glasgow reports industrial production. Additional sources in Manchester, London, Bristol, Southampton and elsewhere give us comprehensive coverage. Oberleutnant Schmidt distributes folders containing recent GARBO reports. The officers read silently, absorbing details about troop movements, convoy assembly, equipment observations, overheard conversations. Agent 4 reports increased destroyer activity in Liverpool, reads Major Kruger from Section 3H. Agent 7 describes coastal fortification improvements in Dover. Agent 3's subsource in Fairfield Shipyard confirms accelerated destroyer production. The pattern suggests continued Atlantic convoy protection focus, possibly preparing for intensified submarine warfare countermeasures. It's exactly the wrong conclusion, which makes it exactly the right conclusion from Harris's perspective in London. GARBO's reports have been carefully constructed to emphasize defensive operations, Atlantic convoy protection, and industrial production for sustained warfare, not preparation for massive amphibious invasion. "What about southeastern England?" asks Oberst Hayden, recently transferred from France. "If the Allies intend invasion, surely we'd see concentration in Dover, Southampton, Portsmouth." "Agent 7 reports Dover activity," Schmidt responds, "but primarily defensive fortifications. No significant landing craft assembly, no obvious invasion staging infrastructure. This is precisely Harris's deception. Agent 7 does report Dover activity, all true, all verifiable through aerial reconnaissance, but she describes defensive preparations, not offensive staging. Her reports guide German attention toward accurate details that support incorrect strategic conclusions." "What about northwestern activity?" Hayden presses. "Liverpool, Glasgow. These are ideal staging areas for Norway invasion or Atlantic operations." "Precisely our assessment," Riley confirms. GARBO's reports suggest the Allies are strengthening Atlantic approaches, possibly planning operations against Norway or intensified convoy protection. In London, this would be called success. The Germans are seeing patterns that don't exist, drawing conclusions that serve Allied strategic deception. But to these officers in Berlin, it feels like penetrating intelligence analysis based on reliable sources. "Source reliability?" Hayden asks. Riley consults his file. "GARBO has operated for over 2 years. His reporting has been consistently accurate when verifiable through other channels. He predicted the North Africa invasion correctly. This is technically true. GARBO did report North Africa invasion preparations, but he reported them so close to the actual invasion that the intelligence arrived too late for German forces to meaningfully respond. Harris had timed it perfectly. Accurate enough to boost GARBO's credibility, late enough to be operationally useless. He has provided detailed, verifiable intelligence about British industrial production, naval movements, troop deployments. Cross-referencing with Luftwaffe reconnaissance confirms his observations. Financial records show consistent payment structure. His network expansion appears organic rather than contrived. Everything Riley says is technically accurate. GARBO's reports do match reconnaissance when they describe physical infrastructure. His financial records are genuine. His network expansion follows logical patterns. What none of these officers know is that every verifiable fact has been carefully selected to support false strategic conclusions, and every genuine document serves a fictional narrative. "What about agent network security?" asks Major Dietrich from Counterintelligence. 27 sources operating in Britain without British security services detecting them seems improbable. The question hangs dangerously. For a moment, the room considers what should be obvious. This level of penetration seems too good to be true. Riley has answers prepared, answers that British intelligence anticipated and accounted for. GARBO's sources are not professional agents. They're ordinary people motivated by money, ideology, or personal grievances. Most don't know they're providing intelligence. GARBO cultivates them carefully, elicits information through seemingly innocent conversation. British security focuses on professional spy rings, not casual information sharing. It's plausible enough to satisfy the room. The officers want to believe. Germany desperately needs intelligence from inside Britain. GARBO provides that intelligence. Confirming his network means confirming German intelligence capabilities. Questioning him means admitting their most valued source might be compromised. Furthermore, Riley continues, GARBO maintains strict operational security. His sources don't know each other. Communications use established cover addresses in neutral countries. Financial transactions route through Portuguese banks. The network structure prevents comprehensive compromise, even if individual agents are discovered. This is actually true, but not in the way Riley thinks. GARBO's agents can't be compromised because they don't exist. They don't know each other because there's nothing to know. The operational security is perfect because it's protecting fiction. January 1944. The Abwehr's confidence in GARBO reaches its peak. Officers cite his reports in strategic assessments. U-boat command uses his Liverpool intelligence to plan convoy interdiction. The General Staff incorporates his observations into their evaluation of Allied invasion capacity. Colonel Georg Hansen, who will soon become Abwehr chief, writes in an internal memo, "Source GARBO represents our most comprehensive intelligence penetration of British military preparations. Continued cultivation and support is essential priority." In London, Harris reads this assessment through intercepted communications. He shares it with the 20 Committee. The satisfaction is palpable. Germany's military intelligence service has not only accepted GARBO's network as genuine, they've made it foundational to their strategic planning. "They're completely invested," observes John Masterman. "If we tell them the invasion is coming at Calais, they'll believe us." "When the time comes," Harris agrees, "they'll believe whatever GARBO tells them. We've spent 2 years building credibility for exactly this moment." February 1944. GARBO reports to Madrid that his network is expanding further. He's recruiting new sources in southeastern England. He's gaining access to invasion planning details. He's positioned to provide critical intelligence about Allied intentions. Kuhlenthal in Madrid forwards this to Berlin with highest priority classification. The response is immediate. Source GARBO is authorized for expanded operations. Additional funding approved. Any intelligence regarding Allied invasion plans is immediate priority. Spare no expense or effort. Germany has just given Harris carte blanche to feed them whatever deception serves Allied purposes. They're paying him to mislead them. They're encouraging him to expand the very network that's systematically corrupting their strategic intelligence. 27 phantom agents have convinced an empire's intelligence service. The stage is set. The audience is primed. Soon, GARBO will deliver the performance that changes the war, and Berlin, watching from the audience, will believe every word of history's most consequential lie. Section 11. Operation Fortitude looms. March 1944. Norfolk House, London. Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force. The conference room hosts the most important military planning session of the war. General Dwight D. Eisenhower sits at the head of the table, surrounded by British and American officers representing every service branch. On the wall, maps show the Normandy coastline in minute detail. Operation Overlord, the invasion of Europe, has been planned for months. Now they must ensure Germany is looking the wrong way when it begins. Lieutenant Colonel Noel Wild, head of Ops B, the Allied Deception Planning Section, stands before the assembled officers. Beside him, Thomas Harris holds a folder marked GARBO. "Gentlemen," Wild begins, "Operation Fortitude is our strategic deception plan to mislead German intelligence about Overlord's timing and location. Success depends on convincing Germany that our main invasion will strike Pas de Calais, not Normandy. The room knows the stakes. If Germany correctly positions its panzer divisions before Allied forces establish beachheads, the invasion could fail catastrophically. Thousands of lives depend on German forces being in the wrong place when Allied troops land. The deception has 2 components," Wild continues. "Fortitude North suggests invasion of Norway, keeping German forces tied down in Scandinavia. Fortitude South indicates our main thrust will come at Pas de Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel." He gestures to Harris. GARBO is central to Fortitude South. His network provides the mechanism to feed Germany a completely false picture of our invasion preparations. Harris steps forward. GARBO's 27 sources are positioned to observe Allied preparations across Britain. The Germans trust them implicitly. We'll use that trust to create a fictional army group threatening Calais while hiding actual preparations in the southwest. The plan is audacious. Create an entire army that doesn't exist. First United States Army Group, supposedly commanded by General George Patton, concentrated in southeastern England, directly across from Calais. Generate enough fake radio traffic, physical props, and intelligence reports to convince Germany this fictional army is real and represents the main invasion force. GARBO's role: report the fictional army's presence while downplaying actual preparations in southern England around Portsmouth and Southampton, where the real invasion force is assembling. Agent 7 in Dover, Harris explains, will report increased military activity consistent with major invasion staging. Agent 3's sources in Scotland will describe division movements heading southeast. Agent 4 in Liverpool will observe American troops training for amphibious operations. Together, they'll paint a picture of massive force concentration threatening Calais. General Bernard Montgomery interjects. The Germans have aerial reconnaissance. They'll see actual preparations in Hampshire and Devon. How do you explain that? We don't hide it, Harris replies. We acknowledge those preparations, but frame them as diversionary. GARBO will report that his sources indicate the Normandy area shows military build-up, but overheard conversations and document glimpses suggest this is intended to draw German attention away from the real invasion at Calais. The logic is perfect. Tell Germany the truth. There is a build-up in Normandy, but convince them it's a deception hiding the real attack at Calais. Turn truth into lie by framing it correctly. Timing is critical, Wild adds. GARBO must report invasion preparations convincingly before D-Day, reinforcing German expectations of Calais. Then, after we land in Normandy, he must convince them this is still the diversion, that the main attack is yet to come at Calais. We need German armor held away from Normandy for at least a week after landing. April 1944. Harris and Pujol begin crafting GARBO's reports with extraordinary care. Every message must be accurate enough to match German reconnaissance, misleading enough to support false conclusions. Agent 7 reports, April 15th, extraordinary increase in Dover military presence. Observed 3rd Canadian Division insignia throughout town. Noted specialized amphibious equipment, unlike anything seen previously. Landing craft assemblies visible in harbor. All true. 3rd Canadian Division is near Dover. Specialized equipment is visible. But the division's role is part of the real invasion force. They'll land in Normandy, not lead an assault on Calais. Agent 7's report tells truth while implying falsehood. Agent 4 reports, April 20th, observed American troops conducting amphibious training exercises, Liverpool area. Overheard conversations suggest Norway operations, possibly diversionary for main invasion elsewhere. The training is real. The Norway conversation is invented. But it serves Fortitude North while reinforcing that Liverpool isn't the main invasion staging area, which is true, but for wrong reasons. May 1944. The pace intensifies. GARBO's network generates daily reports describing the fictional 1st U.S. Army Group, divisions that don't exist, equipment concentrations visible only in doctored photographs, radio traffic from radio operators transmitting empty signals to simulate Army Group communications. The Germans absorb it all. Berlin's intelligence assessments increasingly reference GARBO's network. Their maps show 1st U.S. Army Group positioned in southeastern England. Their strategic planning assumes Calais as primary invasion target. Agent 3 reports, May 10th, observed 4th Army Division movements heading south from Scotland. Volume of traffic suggests corps-level redeployment, possibly invasion staging. 4th Army is entirely fictional, part of Fortitude North. But Agent 3 describes its movement with convincing detail, down to vehicle types and route schedules. Berlin plots these phantom divisions on their maps, calculating how long redeployment from Scotland to southeastern England might take. May 25th, 1944, less than 2 weeks before D-Day. GARBO sends his most important pre-invasion message. From multiple sources reporting consensus, massive invasion force concentrating southeastern England. First US. Army group confirmed comprising minimum 12 divisions. Equipment and supply levels suggest main invasion thrust, not diversionary operation. Notable increase in Patton's headquarters activity. Timing unclear, but preparations appear nearly complete. Separate, smaller force observed Hampshire-Devon area, assessed as diversionary given scale difference. It's the culmination of years of carefully built credibility. GARBO is telling Berlin that the real invasion force, actually assembling in Hampshire and Devon, is the diversion, while the fictional force in southeastern England represents the genuine threat. In Berlin, the intelligence assessment lands on Hitler's desk. The Führer, who trusts intuition over analysis, nevertheless accepts the GARBO intelligence. It confirms his belief that Calais is the logical invasion point, shortest channel crossing, most direct route to Germany. He orders panzer divisions held near Calais. Normandy receives sufficient forces for coastal defense, but not enough mobile armor to throw back a major invasion. GARBO has just influenced the disposition of German armies. 27 phantom agents, none of whom exist, have helped position German forces in precisely the wrong locations. In London, Harris reads the intercepts showing how Berlin has integrated GARBO's intelligence into Wehrmacht strategic planning. The deception has worked. Germany is looking at Calais, expecting First US Army Group. The real invasion will strike Normandy, and when it does, GARBO will need to deliver his most critical performance, convincing Germany, even after Allied troops land in Normandy, that this is still the diversion, that the real invasion is yet to come. The greatest lie in history is about to be told, and the audience, desperate to believe it, has already decided its truth. 27 ghosts in the machine. June 6, 1944, 2 a.m. Madrid, Spain, Juan Pujol Garcia's apartment. The wireless transmitter glows in darkness. Pujol's fingers hover over the keys, preparing to send the most important message of his life. Outside, Madrid sleeps. In London, Harris waits beside his own receiver, monitoring. And across the English Channel, 156,000 Allied troops approach Normandy beaches in the largest amphibious invasion in history. GARBO's network has spent 2 years building credibility for this moment. Tonight, everything depends on timing, precision, and absolute convincing believability. Pujol begins transmitting at 0200 hours. Urgent. Agent 7 reports extraordinary naval activity observed Dover area 0100 hours. Estimates dozens of vessels departing, heading southeast. Cannot confirm destination, but volume suggests major operation imminent. The message is true. There is naval activity, part of a diversionary operation designed to make Germany think Dover-based forces are heading toward Calais. Agent 7, who doesn't exist, is reporting actual events while reinforcing false conclusions. The message reaches Madrid at 0215. Kuhlenthal, awakened by urgent classification, reads it immediately. He knows Berlin needs to receive this intelligence immediately. He begins encoding for transmission to Abwehr headquarters. Then he discovers a problem. Berlin's wireless operator hasn't activated the receiver. In the early morning hours, with no expected urgent traffic, the operator has apparently decided to sleep instead of maintaining watch. History will forever debate whether this was accident or incompetence. The result is undeniable. GARBO's warning about major naval operations reaches Berlin too late to affect German response to the invasion. June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m., Normandy, France, Allied forces landing. American, British, and Canadian troops storm 5 beaches along the Normandy coast. German forces, surprised by the location, fight desperately, but find themselves without sufficient armored reserves to throw back the invasion. Panzer divisions remain held near Calais, waiting for the real invasion that GARBO's network has convinced them is yet to come. By mid-morning, Allied forces have established precarious beachheads. The invasion's outcome remains uncertain. German counterattacks could still push the Allies back into the sea. Everything depends on whether Germany commits its panzer reserves to Normandy or continues holding them near Calais. June 6, 1944. 8:00 p.m. Madrid. GARBO's apartment. Pujol prepares his second critical transmission. Paris has spent the day coordinating with London, crafting a message that must accomplish something nearly impossible. Acknowledge that Allied troops have landed in Normandy, while convincing Germany this is still not the main invasion. GARBO transmits. Agent network reporting consensus. Normandy landings confirmed but assessed as diversionary operation. Agent 3 reports 4th Army divisions remain concentrated Scotland, Southeast England. Agent 7 observes no major equipment depletion Dover area, despite overnight naval activity. Agent 4 confirms 1st U.S. Army Group maintains full-strength southeastern positions. Assessment: Normandy operation designed to draw German reserves away from Calais, where main invasion thrust remains prepared. The message is insane. Allied troops are fighting and dying on Normandy beaches, yet GARBO claims this is a diversion for an even larger invasion that doesn't exist. And Germany believes him. June 7, 1944. Tirpitzufer, Berlin. Abwehr headquarters. Reiler analyzes GARBO's assessment with his senior staff. The intelligence matches what they want to believe, that the Allies are clever enough to stage a massive diversionary operation, that the real invasion will come at Calais, that German strategic planning has been correct all along. GARBO's assessment matches our intelligence from other sources, Riley reports. The force deployed to Normandy appears substantial but not overwhelming. 1st U.S. Army Group remains concentrated in southeastern England. Patton has not deployed. He's Germany's most aggressive general. They wouldn't waste him on a diversion. Every point seems logical. Together, they form a completely false picture that Germany desperately wants to believe. June 8, 1944. Führer headquarters, Berchtesgaden. Hitler receives the Abwehr assessment. His intuition, which has served him poorly throughout the war but which he trusts absolutely, tells him this analysis is correct. The Allies are attempting to fool Germany by landing at Normandy first. He orders, Panzer divisions remain near Calais. Some units may reinforce Normandy, but primary armor reserve must be maintained for the real invasion when it comes. June 9, 1944. GARBO continues transmitting. His network generates constant intelligence about 1st U.S. Army Group's continued presence in southeastern England. Agent 7 reports Patton visiting Dover. Agent 3 confirms divisions remain at full strength in staging areas. Agent 4 describes continued amphibious training in Liverpool. None of it is true. 1st U.S. Army Group doesn't exist. Patton isn't in Dover. The divisions are fictional. But Germany cross-references GARBO's intelligence with their reconnaissance. They see encampments in southeastern England, props, inflatable tanks, empty tent cities. They intercept radio traffic, operators transmitting meaningless signals. They observe activity consistent with major military presence, all theatrical production. The deception holds. German armor remains near Calais. June 10–15, 1944. Normandy battlefield. Allied forces expand their beachheads. Without German armor counterattacking in force, they push inland. American troops fight through hedgerows. British forces advance toward Caen. Canadian units secure their objectives. The invasion succeeds not because the landings were unopposed, they weren't, but because German armored reserves arrived too late and in insufficient numbers. German panzer divisions near Calais wait for orders that never come. They're held in position by Hitler's belief, reinforced by GARBO's intelligence, that Normandy is still a diversion, that the main invasion remains imminent at Calais, June 16, 1944. Finally, belatedly, Hitler authorizes some panzer divisions to move toward Normandy. But weeks have passed. Allied beachheads are consolidated. The critical moment when German armor might have thrown the invasion back into the sea has passed. GARBO has accomplished his mission. 27 phantom agents convinced German intelligence to keep substantial forces away from the actual battlefield for nearly 2 weeks after Allied landings. The delay was decisive. Kulenthal sends a message to GARBO, forwarded from Berlin. Your intelligence regarding Allied invasion intentions was accurate and has been proven correct despite unfortunate communications delays. The Führer personally commends your network's exceptional intelligence work. You have provided invaluable service to the Reich. Hitler has personally praised an intelligence network that doesn't exist for reporting an invasion that wasn't coming. In London, Harris reads this message and allows himself a moment of satisfaction. The greatest deception operation in history has succeeded beyond even optimistic projections. GARBO's network of ghosts has influenced the disposition of German armies during the most critical military operation of the war. Juan Pujol García, sitting at his Madrid apartment, reads the same message and thinks of Spain under fascism, of friends lost in civil war, of the certainty that brought him to this impossible work. 27 fictional people have helped change history. Their non-existence has been weaponized more effectively than their existence ever could have been. The machine of ghosts has performed its function. The invisible actors have delivered their lines. The audience, convinced of the performance's reality, has acted exactly as the script required. And history, which will remember D-Day as a triumph of courage and planning, will eventually learn that victory also depended on the most elaborate fiction ever sold to military intelligence, a network of spies who never existed, reporting events that never happened, convincing an empire to defend against an invasion that was never planned. 27 names in filing cabinets. 27 complete biographies, 27 phantoms who helped win the war by never being born. The Aftermath and Legacy, July 29, 1944. Madrid, Spain. German Embassy. Karl Erich Kulenthal stands in his office, holding a decoration he's been authorized to present on behalf of the German government, the Iron Cross, Second Class. The recipient is Juan Pujol García, who Germany knows as Arabelle, the German code name for their agent the British call GARBO. Kulenthal pins the medal to Pujol's chest. The Reich recognizes your exceptional service. Your intelligence regarding Allied invasion plans was invaluable. The Führer himself has noted your contribution. Pujol accepts the medal with appropriate solemnity. He doesn't mention that he's also been recommended for British honours, a member of the Order of the British Empire, for essentially the same work. He will become one of the only people in history to receive military honours from both sides of the same war. The irony is exquisite. Germany is decorating the man who systematically deceived them for 3 years, whose fictional spy network helped ensure their defeat on D-Day. They're honouring him for intelligence work that was, from their perspective, brilliantly accurate, and from the Allied perspective, brilliantly false. August 1944. Normandy, France. The battlefield. Allied forces push deeper into France. The Normandy breakout succeeds. German forces, their armoured reserves committed too late and in wrong positions, fall back in disarray. The delay GARBO's network created, holding panzer divisions near Calais for crucial weeks after D-Day, has proven strategically decisive. Military historians will later calculate that German armoured reserves reached Normandy approximately 2 weeks later than they might have if GARBO's deception hadn't held them near Calais. 2 weeks during which Allied forces consolidated beachheads, landed reinforcements, established supply lines. 2 weeks that transformed a precarious foothold into an irreversible invasion. September 1944. London. MI5 headquarters. Thomas Harris compiles the final operational assessment of GARBO's network. The statistics are staggering. Over 315 secret letters sent to Madrid between 1942 and 1944. More than 2,000 individual intelligence reports. Every one of them crafted to advance Allied strategic deception while maintaining GARBO's credibility with German intelligence. The 20 Committee meets to review the operation's success. John Masterman, who will later write the definitive account of the double-cross system, calls GARBO the most highly developed example of deception through double agents in the history of warfare. Harris reads aloud some of the German communications praising GARBO's work. Berlin Assessment, June 1944. Arabelle's reports are so complete and reliable that they constitute our most valuable source of intelligence regarding Allied intentions. Kulenthal Memo, July 1944. This agent's network represents the pinnacle of human intelligence operations. Recommend highest honors and continued cultivation. The room absorbs the magnitude of what they've accomplished. They've created 27 fictional people, convincing enough to fool an empire's intelligence apparatus. They've influenced German military strategy during the war's most critical operation. They've proven that strategic deception, properly executed, can be as powerful as conventional military force. November 1944, Madrid. GARBO's network begins its gradual dissolution. The Allies no longer need elaborate deception about invasion locations. They're advancing across France toward Germany. Maintaining the fictional network becomes less valuable than the resources it consumes. Harris crafts a narrative for ending various agents. Agent 3 finishes his studies and returns to Venezuela, a country he never left. Agent 4's restaurant closes due to wartime restrictions because it never existed. Agent 7's health deteriorates, forcing retirement from intelligence work, though she was never born to have health in the first place. Each ending is carefully managed to avoid German suspicion. Agents don't disappear mysteriously. They fade naturally through believable life circumstances. The fictional network dissolves the way real networks would, gradually, through attrition, without arousing counterintelligence concerns. May 8, 1945, VE Day. The war in Europe ends. Germany surrenders. The Abwehr has been dissolved, absorbed into the SS intelligence services, its officers scattered or captured. Karl Erich Kulenthal, GARBO's handler, faces an uncertain future. He still doesn't know his prized agent was controlled by British intelligence. Pujol disappears from Madrid. MI5 arranges his extraction to prevent any possibility of vengeful German intelligence officers discovering the deception and seeking retribution. He moves first to Britain, then eventually to Venezuela, adopting new identities, leaving the GARBO persona behind. For decades, Pujol's role remains classified. The British government, even in victory, chooses not to reveal the extent of their deception operations. The double-cross system, including GARBO's network, becomes one of the war's most closely guarded secrets. 1972, London. Partial disclosure. John Masterman publishes the double-cross system, revealing for the first time that Britain controlled every German agent operating in the UK during the war. The book mentions GARBO, but doesn't identify him or provide operational details. The security classification on specific operations remains in effect. 1984. Full revelation. Writer Nigel West and historian Rupert Allison begin researching GARBO's true identity. They track down Juan Pujol García, living quietly in Venezuela under an assumed name. He's believed dead by most who knew him. He faked his death years earlier to ensure complete separation from his wartime life. When contacted, Pujol initially refuses to discuss his work. The official secrets he swore to protect remain classified. Only after the British government agrees to partial declassification does he consent to tell his story. The revelations astonish historians. The full extent of GARBO's network, 27 fictional agents, thousands of fabricated reports, an intelligence deception that influenced D-Day's outcome, becomes public for the first time nearly 40 years after the events. 1984. London. Return of the Ghost. Pujol returns to Britain for the first time since the war's end. Now 72 years old, he visits the sites of his greatest fictional network. He stands in Liverpool, where Agent 4 supposedly worked. He walks through Dover, where Agent 7 never ran her boarding house. He travels to Glasgow, where Agent 3 never studied. The Duke of Edinburgh presents him with the Member of the Order of the British Empire, officially recognizing his wartime service. British military historians brief him on how his intelligence had been used, showing him German documents that demonstrate how completely Berlin trusted his reports. Pujol sees, for the first time, the full impact of his work. He reads German strategic assessments based on his phantom agents' reports. He examines Wehrmacht troop disposition maps, influenced by his deceptions. He learns that military historians credit his network with materially contributing to D-Day's success. "I didn't fight with guns," he tells the assembled officers and historians. "I fought with imagination. I created people who never existed and made them more believable than reality." The historical assessment. Military historians examining Operation GARBO's impact agree on several conclusions. The operation represented the most sophisticated strategic deception in military history. Creating and maintaining 27 fictional agents, each with complete documentation and consistent personalities, across nearly 3 years, required unprecedented attention to detail and operational security. GARBO's network materially influenced German force disposition during and after D-Day by convincing Germany that first US Army Group threatened Calais. The operation delayed commitment of Panzer reserves to Normandy by approximately 2 weeks, a delay that proved strategically decisive. The operation validated the concept of strategic deception as force multiplier. Resources invested in GARBO, approximately $2,000 monthly, a small team of intelligence officers, technical support, produced strategic effects disproportionate to the investment. 1988, October 10th, Caracas, Venezuela. Juan Pujol García Díaz, at age 76. Obituaries in British and American newspapers finally tell his complete story. The chicken farmer who convinced Nazi Germany he ran Britain's most extensive spy network. The amateur who became the most successful double agent in history. The man whose imagination helped win the Second World War. His legacy endures in intelligence tradecraft. Modern strategic deception operations study GARBO's methods, the attention to consistent detail, the building of credibility through verifiable but operationally useless intelligence, the psychological understanding of what the enemy wants to believe. The Ghost Network's final accounting, 27 agents who never existed, thousands of reports describing events that never happened, or interpreting real events through deliberately false frameworks. An intelligence network so convincing it received Nazi Germany's highest commendations, while simultaneously receiving British military honours. Agent 4 never poured drinks in Liverpool. Agent 7 never rented rooms in Dover. Agent 3 never studied in Glasgow. None of them were born, lived or died. Yet together they influenced the disposition of German armies during history's largest amphibious invasion. Their filing cabinets rest now in Britain's National Archives, thousands of pages documenting complete lives that never existed. Birth certificates for the never born, employment records for jobs never held, letters between people who never met, train tickets for journeys never taken, hotel receipts for stays never experienced. The paperwork is genuine in every technical sense. Correct paper stock, appropriate stamps, period-accurate typewriters. The lives documented are fiction in every factual sense. The intersection of authentic documentation and complete fabrication represents the perfection of strategic deception, the final truth. In war, truth dies first, replaced by propaganda, deception, misinformation. But Operation GARBO proves something more sophisticated, that fiction, properly constructed and consistently maintained, can become more powerful than truth. That imagination, weaponized through intelligence operations, can influence strategy as effectively as armies. 27 ghosts changed history. Their non-existence mattered more than existence could have. They performed their roles perfectly, despite never drawing breath, never speaking words, never taking actions. They were the phantoms in the machine, invisible actors in history's most consequential performance, delivering lines they never spoke to an audience that believed every word. And when the curtain finally fell on the war, they helped win. They dissolved back into the imagination that created them, leaving only paperwork and memory, fiction and fact so thoroughly blended that separating them becomes impossible. The Ghost Network had accomplished its mission. 27 people who never existed helped ensure that Nazi Germany would cease to exist. In the end, absence proved more powerful than presence. Fiction defeated fact. And the greatest spy network in history succeeded precisely because none of it was real.